Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Festivus. Happy holidays, one and all. You didn't think I'd let the season slide by without a gift of some sort, did you? Of course not. And this here one, is wrapped and shiny and nice under the virtual tree or poking from the top of your ear stockings. Because we've all tried to be good boys and girls this year, even if our true natures were a bit naughty, all things considered. But today, Christmas, that's enough about the naughtiness, because we won't be plumbing mature territory in this episode. Not at all. In fact, after a recent Twitter poll, and to honor the magic of the season, I am keeping my word and delivering unto you, dear listeners, a story of a mystical nature. Otherworldly, even. And it's a doozy, because it's the first time I have publicly shared the details of these events, well, ever. Merry Christmas indeed. 'Twas a night in late autumn, and all through the place, something was stirring, something from outer space. You're listening to Buddha and the Slut, and this unbelievable yet entirely true story is called Fire in the Sky. I've always been obsessive. For as long as I can remember, if my favorite show was on, you'd need the emergency broadcast system to move my ass. If a school play was happening, I would lobby teachers for the lead to the point of restraining orders. And if I wanted something for Christmas, really wanted it, I would beg daily from June till December, leaving the Sears catalog open to the appropriate page on my parents' bed until they wanted to burn the damn thing. My tastes may have changed over time, but the willful streak never did. And back in the mid-'80s, I had my teenage laser-focused sights set on some unique desires. There were the 3 shelves of D&D modules and unpainted lead dragons, wizards, and pit fiends in my bedroom. There was the downstairs TV stand stuffed with 30 or so Intellivision video games, and some badly taped episodes of Doctor Who. And don't forget what some would call the special bookcase with the old Peter Rabbit and Charlie Brown collections, the unmarked Dirty Limerick volumes, and 4 jet black Mysteries of the Unknown books from Time Life. Mystic Places, Psychic Powers, Hauntings, and the UFO Phenomenon, which was my memorize every page and recite them like Rain Man favorite. But it wasn't long after that something new was vying for my attention. My obsession. The baby grand piano was my grandfather's on my dad's side. We used to visit him a couple of times a year down in Peterborough, where he lived out his days as a widower. Actually, as a Corvette driving bachelor, retired from his engineering gig at Spar Aerospace. You know, the folks who made the Canadarm for the space shuttle. You'd think that'd be a recipe for the best stories ever, right? Especially for a freak nerd like me. But, alas, no. He was painfully British, so earnest communication amongst the menfolk ranked somewhere between public nudity and the dentist on his scale of priorities. So there wasn't much for me to do at his house other than shoot darts and chill with his dog in the basement, or, when it wouldn't bother the adults, plunk away on the piano upstairs. I was awful at it, but occasionally I'd stumble upon a pleasing chord or familiar melody, and I'd turn to see my granddad smiling, a little glint in his steel blue eyes cutting through the heavy shadows of the sitting room. A few years later, he was staying at our house. He had cancer. He looked distant and frail, and I knew when my dad was in the bathroom with him several times a day that things were not good. That's when I'd slip downstairs and take solace in my own obsessions, my beloved games, comics, those Time Life Bibles on ancient mysteries and UFOs and the afterlife. We didn't speak of it much when my grandpa passed the next summer, so it was a surprise to see a delivery truck pulling into the driveway at our little home by the river in Sutton, Ontario, with his baby grand. The movers took its legs off and hoisted it up into the living room above the front stairs, reassembling it in front of the bay window on the dull green shag. It seemed off in this place, like this hulking block of nut-brown memories, this thrice-per-year childhood distraction, this centerpiece from someone else's life. Still, I could not pull my eyes from it, and soon enough, fingers followed. My folks, in a bid to honor Grandpa's kindness and expand my limited repertoire beyond knuckle-rolling sea shanties and the circle of hell that is chopsticks, paid for piano lessons. And I got pretty good. Quickly, too. I knew I had something when I played a piece for the teacher that winter, a simple fairy tale song that I took the liberty of adding pedal work and left-hand variations to. I turned to gauge her reaction as the final notes drifted through the basement studio like snowflakes. Her glasses were off and her head hung low. She pinched the bridge of her nose and tears fell, splashing on her thigh. So I kept on playing, almost every day. The lead figurines stayed unpainted and the game cartridges gathered dust, but those black and white keys never went cold for long. I practiced classical and contemporary and even followed the radio by ear. I played recitals in iron dress shirts and even tried to write a few songs, not that I had lived enough by 15 to have anything worth saying, let alone sung. But that didn't matter. Not at the time. That's the beauty of being obsessed with something. It doesn't have to make sense. How can it when the rest of the world melts away, leaving only you and the thing you are desperate to see and to know and to someday understand? But there are some things you can never understand, no matter how hard you try, no matter how much you want to, or how obsessed you become. And that's why I will never forget that night in the fall of '85. It was dark out, the only lights coming from a neighbor's flickering street lamp through that big bay window, and some 60-watt spill from my parents' bedroom down the hall. Mom was reading or doing a crossword, her usual pre-bed routine, and my dad was still out hustling real estate, manning the office till close, as he did more and more often that year. I sat down at the piano and lifted the key lid. The keys looked like a wide, gap-toothed grin in the darkness. I thought of my grandfather's smile then, those British teeth that knew football songs and Ryan Sevens and cigarettes and, just maybe, old secrets from the Canadian space program. Feats of mechanical engineering and mysteries of math I would never be equipped to understand. I took a moment to focus and to listen. Crickets chirped outside in the night breeze, and I thought I heard the cawing of a crow. The radio in the living room was playing, and that would help me muffle my noodling. Q107, AC/DC's Jailbreak. The song started, and I plunked along with the rhythm, matching the melody, and I found some chords to harmonize. But my head wasn't in it. It wasn't there. My hands moved, and I began playing the ballad from the Superman movie. Can you read my mind? Do you know what it is you do to me? Don't know who you are, just a friend from another star. I love that part. When Margot Kidder was flown around the skies over Metropolis by an alien Boy Scout in blue pajamas and a bright red cape. Red. My hands moved, and the song changed again. Red was the same color as the suit that William Catt was given by benevolent visitors when he broke down in the desert in The Greatest American Hero. Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. I never thought I could feel so free. Flying away on a wing and a prayer. Who could it be? Believe it or not, it's just me. Just me. I paused. Hands hovered, my foot pressing the pedal, sustaining the last note. just me. I didn't fathom what obsession truly was until I saw Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where an impossible moment possesses Richard Dreyfuss's character so fully, so completely, that he abandons everything, gives it all up, his work, his family, his entire world, his life, to heed the call, to meet them, to experience them, to understand and to join with them, to go somewhere else, far away, leaving this life behind. Obsession fulfilled, with joy as the reward. My fingers fell, and I knew the melody. I played it slow, and then a little faster, and faster. The same 5 notes again and again, a shiny, happy, hopeful frenzy, this clarion call, just like his, just like in the movie, that inescapable obsession given form as music. Hey, play something else, something nice, please. My mom's voice bellowed, breaking the trance. And I stopped, knowing that she was right. That's the thing with obsessions. You forget everything else, everyone else, and all that matters in those moments is the object of interest. Space and time disappear in the thing that has your entire being by the balls. The thing that you want is what you become. I took a breath and shook out my hands. It was a deep breath as I searched for another song in my head, another melody. Nothing came to me, but the radio was still on, so I just relax and play along with it for a while. Q107, AC/DC, Jailbreak. Wait, wasn't that just playing? What time is it now? How long have I been sitting here? And why is the room so bright? My body cast a shadow over the keys then, as a cold whiteness flooded the room. I spun around to the bay window and saw the neighbor's lamp flicker and die. But the space around it, the fence and the shrubs and the asphalt on the driveway, it was all lit up. I froze on the stool. I couldn't hear the radio anymore or the piano's fading notes. Couldn't hear the crickets or the crows or the wind. There was just a hum, like the sound a fridge makes, but lower and deeper and much, much bigger. I pressed against the window to see where the light was coming from. As I touched the glass, the hair on my arms bristled and stood. Brooke? What are you doing? What's happening with the lights? My mother's voice shook me off the stool. I circled towards the stairs, shouting down the hall that something was in the driveway. I saw her getting out of bed, putting on slippers and glasses, her lips pursed, her eyes wide and piercing. I leapt down the stairs, ignoring her cries for me to wait, and opened the front door. The world became blinding and slow, like swimming in a lake made of tar with an angry white sun burning overhead. Too close and far too bright. My mother barged out the door and went slack-jawed on the concrete steps. She looked up, shielding her eyes, and gasped, wondering aloud if this thing was a helicopter and why in God's name it would be landing here. The humming grew. It was in my head and my chest now, this thrum of electricity. The bushes and small trees by the fence trembled, but not from wind, because there was none, and not from spinning rotors or the thing's exhaust, because again, there was none. There was only the circle of light and the dark, dark shape around it, blotting out the stars. The light on the ground narrowed and focused as it crept up the driveway, coming to rest like a spotlight on a stage, maybe 20 feet away, if that. I took a step towards it. I couldn't help myself. I think my mom called to me, but her voice was lost beneath the monstrous shadow in the sky. I followed the beam of light up and tried to make sense of what I was seeing, of the pitch-black circle with the light in the center. It looked familiar. Something out of a movie, maybe, or from that book I knew inside and out, like a memory or an old dream, returning to shock me back awake. Where am I? And when? What was I just thinking? The songs that I played, the shows that I loved, my granddad, his work, cancer, and the secrets that followed him to the grave. The light flared, and a ring of crimson bloomed around it. The hum changed pitch, higher now, and there was more light spreading from the center, unfolding, bright spikes of ice blue, spinning now like spokes on a great and terrible wheel. It was beautiful. My heart hammered. I could hear it, and everything else just disappeared. There was only one thought in my head then as the lights pulsed and the hum grew and the thing burned in the sky like an angel on the world's biggest Christmas tree. This. I want this. I took another step and heard my mother shriek. Her hand clamped down on my shoulder and pulled me inside. I struggled, but her strength was unreal in that moment. She slammed the screen door shut and pinned me to the wall with her eyes before running down to the basement to use the old rotary phone. She dialed in the dark. I think she was calling the police. It didn't matter. How could anything else matter now? Didn't she see what I saw? Didn't she feel it? Didn't she feel it like I felt it? As soon as I heard her connect with someone, I disobeyed and opened the door again. Her screams and pleas were lost on me, drowned in my obsession to see this thing again, to experience more of it, to understand. I ran outside into the light, waving my arms like I was greeting an old friend. But a moment later, the lights dimmed. I shivered as the thing began spinning faster and faster, a thin white ring slicing at the dark along its edge, with the hum getting higher and higher, an impossible note being sung from an impossible machine that spun and shook and suddenly launched straight up into the atmosphere. In less than a second, this gigantic, life-changing thing was smaller than a star in the sky. A second after that, and it was only a memory. There were no explanations forthcoming. No police reports, no sightings in the paper, nothing from the township or the weather stations or even the military. It was like it never happened. Which, for a while, made me even more obsessed, but that obsession was stonewalled. My mom did not want to discuss it, and my dad, when I'd bring it up, would just shake his head and make a joke. A dry British joke, like grandfather like son, I guess. I stopped playing the piano by year's end. By the following spring, my folks bought a new house and the baby grand had found another owner. I'd have more obsessions over the 3 decades that followed. Work and women, mushrooms and martial arts, travel and tarot cards. But there was a pretty intense 7-year stretch where, thanks to the internet, I devoured everything I could find on the UFO phenomenon. Roswell, Majestic 12, Zechariah Stitchin, Bob Lazar in Area 51, the Phoenix Lights, Black Triangles, Art Bell, Greys and Nordics and Illuminati lizards, all of it. Fox Mulder was my spirit animal. But everything ends. Obsessions are no different from this life we experience them in. Eventually, I figured it was time to fold up the old tinfoil hat and save myself further embarrassment. You know, the rolled eyes at work, the girlfriend sighing during episodes of Ancient Aliens. Maybe it was just a phase. Or maybe, like life, it was all just a strange and unknowable dream. The kind they write books about. Speaking of books, I finally got the guts 5 years ago during a long overdue family visit out east to ask my mom about that night. What happened? Did I imagine the whole thing, or dream it, or... She pursed her lips, took a sip of tea, and said, "I remember, and I don't want to talk about it." And that would have been the end of that, except for 6 months later, just before Christmas, in a little house on the outskirts of Brisbane, Australia. I was up late and saw an ad on TV for a re-release of those old Time Life Mysteries of the Unknown books. I got goosebumps and the hair on my arms stood up. Man, that first hit of obsession is one hell of a drug, right? And I went online and spent all night hunting down PDFs and screen grabs of the book's insides. In particular, my childhood favorite, the UFO phenomenon. And somehow, I wasn't surprised when I found the picture, even though it was 30 years late, and it somehow escaped me way back when. It was right there in glossy, mid-res Time Life color. An artist's rendering of an unidentified flying object, hovering low in the night sky, its belly lit up with blue spikes, a red ring, and a bright white center. And just like that, everything changed. Away from thoughts of strange creatures from distant worlds to something much closer to home. To the true power of obsession and how maybe, just maybe, unshakable focus, singular intent really is what brings all things into being. Out of nothing. Cities, civilizations, space shuttle robot arms, visitors from space hovering over some dumb kid's driveway. Every dream that men and women have ever had brought to blinding life because they wanted it more than anything in the world, pulled it from the void with obsession. Obsession is the key to make the unknowable known, to make a dream real, to light a fire in the sky. Again, Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night, and holiday, and impending new year. Thanks again for listening, and I look forward to bringing you more true tales and original audio stories in 2018 and beyond. But for now, this elf on the shelf gots to sign off. So, till next time, it'll be a couple of weeks at least, this podcast was brought to you by the Canadarm. 'Cause of course we got brought in to do all the heavy lifting, am I right? Whatever, eh? We tested her on the shuttle-sized beers till we got it just right, buddy. On the first day of Christmas, my true love gave to me a beer. Later, skaters.